Tonight, groundswell push for a reversal of a value-added tax imposed on some categories of residential electricity consumers as former President John Mahama lambasted government for making cost of doing business in Ghana unbearable.
And then you are coming in with additional taxes. So it's a worry for all of us. It's not going to help at all.
You are paying school fees, you are paying things, you are doing things. So I don't think it's the best time to do that. You understand?
Already there was a 29% increase. There was a 19% increase. Then they tried to fool us with a 4% decrease. And now it's going up again astronomically. And it's making Ghana a very difficult place to do business. All business people are complaining.
Plus details as Energy Ministry is yet to reach a final agreement with two independent power producers on the outstanding energy sector debt valued at some $2 billion.
Reached agreement, exchange term sheets with a significant number of IPPs. The remaining two or so is still ongoing.
And Top Story, as always, is brought to you by Vodafone. Further together. My name is Samuel Kojo Brace. Now, there are growing calls for the reversal of a value-added tax which has been imposed on some categories of residential electricity customers. In a letter communicating its policy to the Public Utility Regulatory Commission, Minister for Finance Ken Oforiatta says any electricity consumption above lifeline units will attract the value-added levy. The ministry explains that the move forms part of the government's COVID-19 recovery program. James Kwesi is a member of our energy desk, and he's been out interacting with a section of the public and joins me in studio with more. James, what have the people been telling you?
Brace, varies of reasons. For instance, some people talk about the effect of the economy on their pocket and reason why they will not be able to meet up this tax. Others also cite reasons of government collecting taxes upon taxes over the period, but they are not seeing that implemented or the effect of that in their both their businesses, infrastructural development and all of that. And some also talk about the fact that the year has just started. They've just made their plans with a lot of expenses to accumulate in the course of the year. And so, from their pocket plans to expend money in the course of the year, as well as the outcome of taxes that we are not seeing in the in the Ghanaian economy, both in businesses and infrastructure development, are some of the varied reasons why they think that government need to rethink either cancel it or maintain the electricity flow. If the lights are on, then they can consider paying some of these things. We can listen to them as they make the point across these varied reasons.
This week in particular, at the office, we had to lock the place for 2 days. What is the efficiency? 2 days, and I pay my workers. I have about 3 workers I'm paying. How do I pay them? And then you are coming in with additional taxes. So it's a worry for all of us. It's not going to help at all. Already consistency when it comes to the power we are not getting. As for the taxes, if they are giving us value for our money, we will pay. We are ready to pay.
You are paying school fees, you are paying things, you are doing things. So I don't think it's the best time to do that. You understand?
The government interest is in to generate more revenue for more development.
I don't think so because people are really suffering.
We are ready to pay other taxes, but not electricity.
Yeah, some of the taxes is okay, but some are not okay. So
at the first time I used to pay like 50 cedis, but now it's going high like 100 cedis because already you'll be paying your base for maybe for your toilet this thing, and then the other ways about maybe water bills and those stuff, and then the money that you are going to eat and those stuff, it's not good. It's not good. When I came in this Accra, I'm renting. I'm paying rent bill almost like 300 Ghana cedis. Do you get me? For a month too. So maybe my landlord is taking me like 2 years. almost getting to 7,200 or 7,400. And then, and I'll be paying all these things. I'm a young boy. And, what he's doing is not good at all.
Well, so those are some views of some Ghanaians about this particular new tax measure introduced by government. Well, Joy News data analyst Isaac Kofi joins us with a breakdown of exactly how much that means to you and your pocket. Kofi, thanks for joining us. First, is it clear how this VAT on electricity adds to the general revenue target of government?
Kojo, if you can hear me, the exact amount is actually unknown at the moment, but what the Joy News research desk understands is that government has already told the IMF that it was going to go heavy on the removal of VAT exemptions on certain products and services. And this particular move that we are talking about may be one of them. And so we also understand that government is hoping to get more than 80% of the target revenue for this year from taxes, and VAT is a big component, Kojo. And we are talking about some 37 billion Ghana cedis that will be raised compared to the 23.7 billion cedis targeted last year.
Interesting. Let's now talk about the consumer. How much will a consumer above the lifeline pay by consuming electricity per unit?
The lifeline is currently between 0 to 30% kilowatt hour. We are still waiting for details from the Ghana Revenue Authority and then PRC. But as they say, there is absolutely no free land, Kojo. So remember that government recently decided to reduce the lifeline consumer bracket. So it was first 0 to 50%, 50 kilowatt hour. Then it was reduced to 0 to 30. And so many consumers who before belonged to that 0 to 50 consumption bracket were actually truncated, and we saw many of them price out after enjoying power for free during the heat of the pandemic. And households who actually enjoyed 50% discount on their bills during the pandemic are now paying more in taxes, and we believe that more will actually be paid as a result of this move. So government actually spends somewhere about 1 billion Ghana cedis to provide free electricity to those who then belong to the lifeline bracket of 0 to 50. And then now we are seeing government apply a number of taxes, including VAT, to actually help recover from that, COVID-19 shock.
But do you know exactly how much, for example, if I consume electricity per unit, how much I'll pay above the lifeline?
The exact amount will be actually indicated when the Ghana Revenue Authority actually puts out the rate. But we know that the highest VAT rate, let me say, because of the changes that actually occurred, we are looking around 15%.
Okay.
But we do not know how the application is going to be, whether it's going to be a flat rate or it's going to be the usual one.
Okay.
But definitely, those who consume, above 30 kilowatt hour per month, be ready to pay more.
All right. Now, former President John Mahama is the latest to add his voice to the growing calls for the reversal of the value-added tax on electricity. John Mahama says the move will only pile up the cost of electricity, which has shot up by 29% increase. Now, John Mahama says the cost of doing business in Ghana will also become unbearable.
Today, Dumso, they are kicking it like a football. Why? Because he wants to kick it over the 7th January 2025 line and hand the trouble over to somebody else. And yet we resolved it before they came into office. Today, they put value-added tax on electricity bills and COVID levy, NHIL levy, GET fund levy, all on electricity bills. And so that is going to send the cost of your electricity bills up. Already there was a 29% increase, there was a 19% increase, then they tried to fool us with a 4% decrease, and now it's going up again astronomically. And it's making Ghana a very difficult place to do business. All business people are complaining. I mean, the owner of this hotel who has given us this resort to do this meeting, you should ask him how much he's paying in electricity bill. And yet, because of the mismanagement of the president and his cousin and his vice president, it has plunged all of us into a difficult situation where they have pledged to the IMF to raise as much revenue as they can. And the point is, while you are raising revenue, reduce your expenditure. Because that's what any sane, reasonable person does. Because if you reduce your expenditure, you can ease the burden that you're putting on the taxpayer. If they cut down the expenditure of the office of the president, they've doubled it. Year on year, budget went up by 82 billion cedis. And so, if you reduce the rise of the budget in terms of expenditure, then you could reduce the incidence of tax. You might not need to place a value-added tax on electricity so that you pass the relief on to the people of Ghana.
That's former President John Mahama. We've been joined by the ranking on the Mines and Energy Committee of Parliament, John Jinapor, for a chat on this. Grateful for joining us here. Now, once this tax measure has been passed by Parliament, isn't it a done deal?
Well, this tax measure, don't forget, was passed in the mid-year review of last year. But the implementation was problematic. The government decided not to implement it until the IMF, getting to the tail end of the year, insisted that they ought to implement it because it is part of the IMF conditionality. And if you read the extended credit agreement, you would realize that government committed to imposing VAT on residential customers. This has never happened. Residential consumers have always been regarded as social consumers. And so this is the first time you're going to see the imposition of VAT on residential consumption. Aside that, the threshold has been lowered from 50 kilowatt hour a month to 30 kilowatt hour. And I tell you, virtually nobody would fall within that bracket because it's just impossible to consume 30 kilowatts within a month. And so what this is going to do is that it's going to lead to high tariffs for the ordinary consumer. And the information I'm picking from GRA is that it's not just VAT. They intend imposing the NHIL levy as well, which is 2.5. The Jet Fund levy, which is also 2.5. And I think I'll pick the third levy for you. And with that, what government has done is also to change the VAT structure. Under the NDC, all these taxes were put together and labeled as VAT. What this government does is that they would impose the NHIL levy, impose the Get Fund levy, have a global figure before they impose the 15% on that global figure. So the effective tax rate then takes you to around 21%. And so you should be expecting to pay around 20% more on your consumption. And this VAT rate is ad valorem. It's not a specific tax. So anytime the PUIT adjusts tariffs for the utilities, there would be an upward automatic adjustment on the VAT component as well because it's ad valorem or a percentage on the amount that you'll be paying. So this is going to create a serious problem. And we find this very, very unfortunate.
Okay.
Already, and I heard your reporter talk about the relief that government gave during COVID. We are already paying COVID levy. We are paying a COVID recovery levy. Aside that, this government has come up with a new tax known as the Energy Sector Recovery Levy. It's a completely new tax. We are paying that as well.
Okay.
So this VAT cannot be the case that they are charging VAT because they want to recoup a certain 1 billion. Then it would have had sunset clauses. But you see, there are serious issues at ECG, and this, you have to use your platform to send a signal to ECG that they will be hearing from me next week.
Okay.
Already, ECG has decided to outsource all the billing system to a company, and my information is that they have clandestinely, secretly, handed the whole billing system of ECG to a company called Haptel. Look, this is the same as the SML that we are witnessing. And they are charging
why is that problematic then? Why is it problematic they do that?
Because one, they appeared before Parliament, and I specifically asked them. They said no, they were only running a pilot program. They would advertise to be an open competitive tender. Bidders will come in, there will be evaluation. Parliament will be briefed. We'll get to know all the charges. and the details, only for them to clandestinely do that. I've also gotten documentary evidence showing that ECG has decided to sell all of these vehicles and to outsource the transportation to another company. And when I show the documents to you and the amount of money this company is charging ECG, I'm raising these issues because if we reduce the losses, if we improve the rate of efficiency at ECG, you wouldn't need this fact. The drain and the wastage in the system is so much. That is why you are compelled by the IMF, under the IMF agreement, to impose tax on residential consumption. Because the losses moved from around 20% to now about 30%.
Okay, we cannot independently verify what agree to what you're saying, but we'll keep.
I will bring the documents to you. So I have the documentary evidence.
Great. So when it comes, we'll look at it. But you mentioned that nobody is going to benefit from if they say a lifeline. All of us are going to pay. But I remember in 2020, they said some 1.7 million consumers of electricity would benefit from that measure they put in because they were at the lifeline. Are we saying that these 1.7 million have moved from lifeline and spending above that?
Because you've lowered the lifeline. It's like saying that if you are, say, 10 kilograms and below, government would support you. And if government decides now, 10 kilograms and above, if government decides that it will now lower it to 5, it means that all those 5 and above, or just above 5, say 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, they won't benefit. So if the lifeline consumption was 50, and government now decides that they will lower the threshold from 50 to 30, what it means is that a lot more people will not benefit hitherto when it was 50. It's straightforward logic.
Okay. All right. Let me bring in Justice Kojo Yaoche, who's policy lead for petroleum and conventional energy at the Africa Center for Energy Policy, ACEP. Now, he argues that the tax measure will be detrimental to the economy. Grateful for joining us, Kojo. Why do you make this point?
First of all, let me say that the IMF interpretation is part of its long practice strategy. Of course.
Kojo, if you could reposition yourself for us, we'll be grateful. Your line keeps cutting.
Is it better?
Let's try.
Is it better?
Let's give it a try.
Yeah, so I was saying that, the IMF believes that, as a theoretical, if you raise tariffs, it will enhance revenue and the sector's liquidity. In fact, from September 2022 to June 2023, tariffs have increased by from 100%, with a 4% reduction in the last quarter of 2023. And this is in addition to the energy debt recovery levy that we pay on petroleum and the Delta Fund levy that we pay on petroleum as well. Yet, our liquidity problems have worsened. Recently, we've seen IPPs threatening to cut power. WAPCO eventually shut pipes to us due to our liability. And while all of this is going on, the recurrent liabilities are also accumulating into debt. So this is clear that it's not increasing tariffs that is going to solve the problem. It will not achieve the desired effective that we are looking for. And government would have to now take money from the budget that it could have spent on other sectors of the economy to keep settling under recovery of the power sector.
Okay.
When the tariff is imposed, we are expecting two outcomes. One, power will become too expensive for consumers, and people will begin to consume power illegally, which will further compound the revenue liquidity. Two, consumers that can actually pay for the power, including small business, will seek competitive alternatives outside the grid. And with solar and other renewable energy technologies becoming cheaper, this will be more favorable. So people leaving the grid is also bad for the ECG's bottom line. Essentially, that is what it is. So any effort to increase tariffs that is not complemented with resolving the revenue leakages and debt accumulation at the distribution which ECG is in charge of will be an exercise in futility.
It looks like you and John and most people we've spoken to agree that this won't be good for the economy. Something must be done. How should the government approach this issue? I mean, you've spoken about checking revenue losses. What should they do now?
Government's existing approach of allowing it to reform its manage its challenges has failed to reach the needed quality of management. A government management structure at ECG is unlikely to succeed. Power is and when you run power with what you get is that what we are is going back to the 2014 conversation, reconsidering the role of the private sector in the management of ECG. However, we advise that it should not replicate the flawed model of the PDS that we have, right? We should consider dividing the financial requirements into manageable portions that Ghanaian businesses and funds can solve. And then this local investors can then establish a robust management structure that paves the way for eventual ECG on the Ghana stock. Right. Those are things, because government has proven that it has no handle on the debt sustainability issues of ECG.
Okay. Let me bring in John here. John, people are calling for this tax measure to be reversed. What can Parliament do?
Well, you will remember that we voted against it, and the record will bear that the minority voted en bloc against it. Majority passed it. But something happened. Even the majority side, we told them they did not anticipate that residential consumption would be included in the VAT bracket, because the whole bill was couched in a way that looked very deceptive. It's the same with the income tax now. They've come to lower the threshold again. And if you read what is in the budget, they say that they are providing relief. But when you lower the threshold, it means that you are pushing a lot more people into the higher income bracket so that they will pay taxes. We would keep advocating. We would work with like-minded people and encourage government to hold on and deal with the real issues confronting the power sector. Right. We do not believe that it is the time to impose VAT on residential consumption. But that's how we can go.
Okay.
And that's the unfortunate thing about democracy. We can advocate, we may embark on some civil action, but that will involve some level of consultation. And if it becomes necessary that we should embark on civil action, let me assure you we'll do that.
Kindly hold the line for me, because on Wednesday, energy analyst Kojo Poku mentioned to us that government has decided to step down on this decision to implement this tax measure. Listen.
But for this particular letter, it's been, for me, my checks, it tells me that it's been stepped down and it hasn't been implemented. Because look, we have to, as much as some of us are trying for more money to be raised to fix ECG and to fix the sector, we cannot also pile on some of these taxes beginning of the year when we are all coming out of the festive season, and a lot of taxes are taking effect from 1st of January.
Okay.
I think the powers that be have agreed to step this down for the time being, because it takes a lot of sensitization. Even the ECG software needs to be updated in the way they calculate the non-lifeline for the residential. So it's not going to be implemented immediately. There's a lot of consultation going to go on before it is implemented. But we can all agree that when we need money to fix something, it would have to come from tariffs of taxes.
Okay. All right.
But for me, I think the timing is wrong. It's a wrong time to introduce more VAT on electricity at this stage.
So John, you heard him there. Looks like government is trying to say, well, let's take our time on this. Is this the same that you pick from your sources?
But that's not the same as deciding that would implement it. If you need to configure ECG system so that they can recalibrate it and implement this VAT on residential consumers, how is that a relief? It's not a relief. If government has decided that sensitize consumers before they pay the tax, How is that a relief? The only relief is a complete withdrawal of this obnoxious VAT on residential consumption. And listening to my good friend Kojo, I don't get a sense that government has decided that they will beat a retreat. All they are saying is that let's put in place the mechanism, framework to implement VAT on residential consumers. So it might just delay for some time, but eventually it's an IMF conditionality. That's what I'm saying. And the IMF, I know and I'm aware, is insistent that because you signed onto this conditionality, you must meet that conditionality by implementing the VAT on consumers. So it's not
but if it is, and we all need the IMF money to help stabilize the economy, is it wrong for government to then implement it?
Just show you the poor negotiation skills of government. That tells you that this government rushed into the IMF program. Because it's an IMF program that is brought so many taxes, my brother. We are paying COVID levy. We are paying pollution levy. We are paying energy sector recovery levy. We are paying financial sector recovery levy. We are paying e-levy. Now we are paying more on income tax. And now we are paying VAT on residential consumers. Incomes of people in terms of their investment, they've taken a huge haircut. Inflation is higher than even the minimum rate in terms of increment. And so, what is the benefit from this IMF program? It's rather leading to hardship. An IMF program that results in untold hardship is not worth it. We've gone to IMF before. Under the NDT, we went to the IMF. Did we have a haircut? Did we introduce all this plethora of taxes? Did we introduce VAT on residential consumption?
Okay.
What kind of IMF program? And that's why I agree with those who are saying that this government is racing for the coveted title of tax return. Because if you look at the taxes and the number of taxes within this short space of time, indeed they qualify for tax return.
Thank you very much, John Jenapo, for joining us. He is the ranking on the Mines and Energy Committee and a former Deputy Power Minister. Also grateful to Justice Kojo Yauche, Policy Lead for Petroleum and Conventional Energy at the African Center for Energy Policy. This has been the top story brought to you always by Vodafone. My name is Samuel Kojo Brace. Up next is Ghana Connect with Maxwell Agbagba.